صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان. الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان. والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان. والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ رب المشرقين ورب المغربين. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ يسأله من في السماوات والأرض كل يوم هو في شأن. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ صدق الله العلي العظيم.
I did want to open up with my name, Zan Joffrey. I'll be your host for today. Expressive Echoes, as you can see. We have a great panel with us here today, who I do want to introduce first. So
I'm Dr. Liaquat Takim.
My name is Nuri, and I try to write poetry.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. My name is Ali Abbas, and my story is very simple for a lot of you sitting here. I've been involved in many activities for the promotion of Islam and the Ahlul Bayt. One of the founding members of alislam.org and one of the editors for the Shia Encyclopedia. The Shia Encyclopedia was written over a period of 2 years in discussions and dialogues with our Sunni brothers and sisters. And you can actually access it on alislam.org. One of the things we want to talk about today is that in terms of our own identity as a woman, as a man, as a father and a mother, and as children, how do you express yourself? And in the process of that expression, how do you discover who you are? And in the process of that discovery, when you become self-aware, what do you become aware about your own self? We have on our panel, mashallah, some very gifted individuals. We have Brother Zan, who's written a book. I'm going to introduce him. His book came out of the tragedy that we witnessed a couple of years ago during COVID. It was also his understanding to make sense of who he was, what his struggles were, and more importantly, how did he cope with those struggles? What were the resources that he had available that helped him understand his struggles, and how did he derive meaning from those struggles? So he wrote a book about it, and that's why we're here. It's about self-expression. We also have Dr. Uncle Lakat Takim. Lakat Takim, mashallah, he has, if you're familiar with his works, he's written a lot of works on understanding about the Ahlul Bayt. But there's another aspect that I really cherish about him. He engages the community to do ziyarah. He's translated a ziyarah book to help you be educated about the process of the ziyarah. And one of the reasons we have him on this panel is to give a sense of how was writing and expression and the ziyarah as a tool to understand who you are, your relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and more importantly, to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his Ahlul Bayt. Then we also have with us Brother Nuri Sardar. Brother Nuri Sardar, if you look at ways of self-expression, right? One way you express yourself is through your words. One way you express yourself is writing down those words. And the last form of expression that bears from your words is you speak those words. And Brother Nuri Sardar exemplifies that. I have 5 of his books here. And one of his books, the title is so revealing. It says, Speaking Tears. How do you do that? How do you express that? And I'm going to quote a very simple piece he has from his book. In one of the poems, he says, every tear that soothes you becomes defiant and wise. So we are here in this panel. We're going to talk about ways of self-expression. We have accomplished authors and writers. We inshallah hope to benefit from their talks, and we also hope to benefit from what you have to say about your own experience and your own journey of self-expression.
I'd like to add something as well. So I remember it was a cold night, as all cold nights are in London, 2005. I was going through an existential crisis. I was about 14, 15 years old, I think. My best friend was Shia, and I was really I couldn't be away at this feeling eating at me, wondering about Shia Islam. So what I'd do was I'd Google Shia Islam, and what would come up was a Shiite encyclopedia, which Ali Abbas edited all those years ago. And just by reading through that and, really, being inspired by it, that was one of the catalysts to push me toward embracing Shia Islam. And then eventually, not to speak about what I do, but writing poetry and basically being here before you today. The point I'm trying to make is it's through words and writing and hard work via words and writing that you don't know what kind of impact your words can have. Another prime example, I always talk about this quite candidly, I've begun to speak about it quite candidly more so, is when I write poetry, I write it in a place of beautiful spiritual awareness, okay? I'm not always beautifully spiritually aware. I'm sure none of us here are, right? So what Ali Abbas quoted you, what he's reading, is the best part of me. On that day, it was written in 2010. I saw the date beneath it. I don't remember writing those words. I completely forgot. I wrote it, I put it in the book, and I just forgot about it. I don't remember. Even reading it, I can't even remember that I wrote it myself. But it's lingered with him till today and inspires him today. That's not me. That's the fact that in that moment, God through his wisdom, all I do is pick up the pen, I wrote what I wrote, and that lingers forever. I think that's the main thing to take away from today about writing and about putting your things on paper. You have no idea what it will do. Even me, for example, right now, the past few years, I put a lot of effort into social media and posting couplets on social media. And I was listening to I'm just talking, by the way. I was listening to a lecture series by Sedbar Ghazwini. Very simple, about death. And he just goes through the 5 stages of death. I think death, the grave, barzakh, judgment, and resurrection judgment, something like that, the 5 stages. I am a very, like, if you ask me the kind of person that I am, or what kind of faults I have, I'm very like rigid in the way I think. I think, okay, I need to do this to get to here. I'm very like, I'm a calculator, man. I've got an accountant's kind of mind. So I'm like, if I want my words to inspire as many people as possible, taking into account the fact that we're all going to die one day, and the next life is where, what we do really counts, rather than this life. Why am I wasting time? Not wasting. Why am I focusing more so on couplets on social media that might inspire people, might get a few likes, but a few months from now, a year from now, they're gone. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, Instagram is no longer exists, for example. What I should be doing is focusing more on compiling books, because it might not sell 1 million copies, but 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 100 years from now, people hopefully still might have access to it. And those words still remain, and those rewards still come to me, inshallah. So I think that we really underestimate how important writing is. We really underestimate the impact it can have. Until today, people will come to me and say, oh, this poem inspired me to this. And I'm like, well, in the back of my mind, that wasn't my intention. I didn't expect it to go this far. Through Allah's tawfiq, I went this far, impacted someone in a way I can't even imagine. Right? And that's something we're all capable of. No one here, I do filmmaking as my career. No one here needs a camera and $10,000 worth of equipment to write a book. You don't even need a MacBook to write a book. You just need the paper and a pen. The 2 easiest things you can attain. Any of us here can write. Be it a book, be it short form, long form, we can all do it. And it is truly the most impactful. Another thing I will say is that one thing I've realized is that in life, there are different types of crafts, and each craft has reward and benefit, and some have less reward and benefit, which is why they say, for example, there are some, businesses you can enter which are makruh. So, for example, being a grave digger, I think, is one. A butcher is one. Of course, we need them, but in many cases, it's makruh to become a butcher. Like there's other crafts that are better. So, me, for example, I have a business where I sell rings. Doesn't make a lot of money, a bit of money here and there, but it's like whenever I'm bringing the rings together and posting them and posting them out, I feel like it's a clean job. It feels very beautiful. Like it feels very spiritual. So I've realized that there's certain crafts that really go far and have benefit to them. Writing is really one of those crafts. Prime example, the first book that I wrote, that I put together, I'm so embarrassed from the cover that Ali shared because I look so young, and I'm embarrassed I even put my face on those covers as opposed to like a picture of a shrine or something. The first book that I compiled, the poetry is looking back now, it's really horrible. But I remember I printed 100 copies of that book, 100 copies, 2009. Somehow, I don't know how, it doesn't make sense to me. Somehow, I'll go to my friend's house in DC. I'll go to a house in LA. I'll go to a house in the middle of nowhere, and they'll be like, oh, by the way, we have your book sitting on our shelf. I was like, there's 100 copies. How did you even get this? It doesn't make any sense. So my point is, subhanAllah, like, I believe writing really is a craft that has a lot of barakah in it. It can really go far, really, depending on what you write about, of course. But I think it's a very beneficial craft. Inshallah, I hope that was a nice waffle.
I mean, you hit a lot of points that we're going to hit, so I think it's a good introduction. Doctor, thinking, do you want to say anything?
Some thoughts on writing, Doctor?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maybe I'll talk more when we talk about the writing itself. Just very briefly, I'm fortunate enough to have written a number of books, translated 8 of them. Now I'm working on the 9th one. And I've also written about 140 articles which have been published in journals, encyclopedias. It's more at the academic level. And I want to talk more about the writing later on when we talk about Shiism and writing. But very briefly, writing is important because it concretizes and focuses your ideas. We all have certain ideas, but if we don't write them down, we tend to forget them, misplace them. And one thing I also want to tell you is that writing is not only for others, it's also about yourself. If you write something when you are younger and then you read it, you will see the evolution in yourself, in your ideas. And we all have to go through a process of evolution. If I write now what I wrote 20 years ago, then there's a problem with me. Because my thinking, my ideas, my way of looking at people, at myself, changes with time. And when I read what I wrote before, it tells me not only about what I wrote, but what I was, about myself, how I was thinking at that time. So writing is a very important dimension. Inshallah, we'll talk more about that later.
Thank you all. I mean, I can resonate with everything you're saying. The book that I wrote, Infallible Wisdom, is a daily reflection I did in college, and I could see myself evolve every single day if you take the time to reflect and write. And it should give you guys comfort that I am not a writer at all, and there's a book published in my name. I don't know how that happened, but I think it goes to show that if you have good intentions and you put your thoughts on paper, it can impact a lot of people. And that's kind of why our title today is Expressive Echoes. What you put down on paper can actually echo through time. What Ali Abbas put together helped Nouri. What Nouri put together is helping all of us, et cetera, et cetera. So, to Nouri's point, social media only lasts, a couple seconds and then you forget about it. Writing lasts forever. And, like Dr. Takim said, we'll talk about how Shia Islam has spread through the pen. But you must be wondering, okay, what do I want to gain from this at the end of this session? What should come out of it? It's really to unlock the unique potential within each of you to be an ambassador of the Ahl Bayt through reflection and writing. One thing that I do want to say is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put curiosity within us for a reason. And He tells us to reflect. Why does He tell us to reflect? Because He knows that if we reflect, we'll find a path to Him. And every single person goes through their unique experiences in life, right? No two individuals go through the same exact thing in life. So everyone's perspective on the same thing can be different, but guide you towards God in different ways, right? And your experiences help other people relate to you. And I think that's really why the Ahl Bayt say, if you know 40 of our hadiths, then that's all you really need to know, because it's that simple. Based on your life experiences, 40 hadiths from the Ahl Bayt really touch your fitrah and who you are as a human being. And if you take the time to reflect on just 40, it'll really change your perspective on life. So that's what we want to kind of get out of this. Inshallah, you guys are already doing amazing things. We have Sarah here from Sukoon with Sarah on Instagram. She's already doing, she's right here. She's doing great things. She's already an ambassador. I'm sure many of you are, but inshallah, after this workshop, you all can pick up a pen, put your thoughts on paper, and share them with others. So thanks for being here. I did want to cover our agenda. We did welcome and introductions. Next, we're going to talk about deep reflection and writing and how they're associated. What do the Ahl Bayt sallallahu alaihi wasallam say about reflecting? What does science say about reflective writing? And how does it all come together to develop who we are? Then we'll go into an activity where each of you will reflect on a hadith from the Ahl Bayt in groups and discuss your reflection with each other and then share it with the audience. 4, Dr. Takim will talk about how writing has been the cause for the spread of Shia Islam. 5, we'll talk about the impact of personal narratives. I think we covered it already a bit in our introductions, but we could touch on things that we might want to dig a bit deeper into. Hopefully we have time for all of this. I know we only have an hour left. Activity 2 is a reflection on how Ahl Bayt have influenced your life and your personal experiences and how they've influenced your personal narrative. And then we'll have a Q&A if we have time at the end. Sound good? Okay. Any objections? Anyone want to change the agenda? All right, cool. I did want to make this a bit collaborative and interactive, so I'll ask a few questions, and you could just raise your hand so everyone can understand, everyone in the room. How many of you are enjoying Ummah so far this weekend? I see some hands not raised. That's okay. How many of you would consider yourself a writer? Okay. Not too many hands, which is good. That's why people are here. How many of you take active time in your day to reflect? Okay, that's awesome. Those are good numbers. How many of you want to be an ambassador of the Ahl Bayt? All right, perfect. Well, it seems like we have the right people in the room. So we'll go ahead and get started. I did want to start by just sharing some Quranic verses and hadiths from the Ahl Bayt on reflection and why it's so important. So one, it's from Surah Rum, chapter 30, verse 8. Do they not reflect within themselves? Allah did not create the heavens and the earth and what is between them two, but with truth and for an appointed term. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is really encouraging us to reflect, right? Reflect within yourself As Imam Ali states, like all your answers are within you if only you reflect and looked inward, right? And keep all these in your mind, because I have a question for y'all at the end of this. We always talk about reflection, but what does that really mean, right? And that's the question. So just keep that in your mind. Next, it's a hadith from Imam Ali. Contemplation invites man towards a good deed and its performance. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, an hour of contemplation, and many of you probably heard this, is superior to an entire year's worship. Does anyone want to guess why this might be? Why is an hour reflection better than an entire years of worship? Some hadiths also say 70 years of worship. Anyone want to share their thoughts? Yeah, go ahead. I think that, do you guys have a mic? Oh, sorry, they're drinking water. Sorry.
Hi. I was thinking maybe it's about like your intention with worship, because if you're just doing worship without really thinking about what you're doing or why you're doing it, then it's not going to be as impactful towards your faith and towards your like collection of good deeds, compared to like an hour where you're thinking about your place and like thinking about your faith and really being intentional about it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's completely right. And if the panelists have anything to add too, but from my perspective, it's, contemplation really hits the soul. For example, if you're praying namaz and you're doing it daily, every single day, but you don't know what you're reciting, right? For example, if you don't know Arabic and you don't know the translation, or you don't know the purpose of it, or you don't feel that you're actually in front of God, is it really going to change who you are as a human being? I was talking in the car with Sarah. I think she's a speaker here as well. And we were essentially saying that reflection and everything that Ahl-Bayt teaches is to reform ourselves and our soul, to make us more humble in front of God. And reflection is really a means to do that. Really like praying for the sake of what? Right? Why are we praying every single day? Why do we have to pray 5 times a day? Why do we have to fast? All of that is to essentially transform our soul, to be humble and serve God in a way where we actually understand Him, right? God doesn't like servitude just for the sake of servitude. He really wants you to understand Him. And I think that's really where the beauty lies, and sometimes what we miss out on. It's like, why are we actually doing these things? It's actually genuinely very beautiful if you actually understand who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is.
One of the best moments of reflection within the ibadat is the dua. We, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, are very lucky in that we have the legacy, especially of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, in the duas. And what the duas are not simply supplication. Remember this much: when you do a dua, you're not only asking of Allah, you are asking about yourself. That's why many a time you are actually admitting, I admit my wrongdoings in front of Allah. وَأَنَا عَبْدُكَ الضَّعِيفُ الظَّلِيلُ الْحَقِيرُ الْمِسْكِينُ الْمُسْتَكِينُ. I am this, I have done wrong, I have the one who has committed sins, and so on. It's actually an opportunity to open the conscious. Because many a time we do things without even thinking, and the conscious, we kill it. We kill the conscious, because if we don't kill the conscious will kill us. And the dua is a way of us opening our conscious, making us fully aware, and more importantly, breaking the arrogance that we have. Because when you're arrogant, when I'm arrogant, I don't even think about the bad things that I do. But the duas ask me to look within myself, not outside. And when I can see my own faults, then I become more tolerant of other people's faults.
Add a reflection on that, and just an offshoot point. I think for those of you who are downstairs, I mentioned that I feel so sad because I feel like in our religion, especially in Shia Islam, we have the answer to every challenge that this society faces, right? And one of the biggest challenges that we face right now is the issue of mental health, right? And I'm sure I'm not going to give like a blanket solution, but if you open Sahif al-Sajadiyah, the last dua of the first chapter is called Dua for Worries, and it's literally designed specifically to remove your worries. And it's something that I wish, so many more people would know, because for those of you who recite it, you'll see anytime you're going through a stressful time in life, once you recite it, take my word for it, you'll literally feel your worry and your anxiety leaving you, inshallah. So hopefully we can benefit from that. Yeah, sure. So, yeah, sure. That was an offshoot point, but the point about reflection is very interesting because I think one thing, and I guess it kind of leads to my last point. Writing is very, I'm sure Zain will know, very therapeutic, and I think it's something that we all need to look toward, especially in this day and age. Me personally, I can say, for a fact that my mind is always, I'm sure many creative minds might be similar, just running around in circles. It's going here and then going there. In America, then Iraq, and it's going to Mars, and then Jupiter. It's just running around everywhere. Past, present, future. It's all over the place. When I write, and read. When I write and read, I really center my mind. When I read, I calm it down. And when I write, I really, just try and get everything onto paper, which is why they say journaling is so important, which your book is basically a journal, right? If I'm not mistaken. So journaling is so important. They say journal. Because let's say, for example, you're very upset about something. It can be something very silly. This happens to me a lot. This guy was rude to me, for example. It happens to us all the time, right? Write it down. Look at it back and you realize how silly it can be sometimes, or how traumatic it was, and it's good on you to embrace that trauma. For example, writing is very therapeutic. So I think that when you talk about reflecting reminds us that our mind is truly like nothing else. We have the capacity to literally build worlds. Allah can build worlds, and we also have the capacity, not on the same level, of course, but to build worlds in the form of storytelling, in the form of writing, in the form of, art and everything else, right? That is an incredible power. And I think it's one thing that we don't utilize enough. And I think any of us here really has that capacity to be able to write and create something. So I really recommend linking that kind of reflection, any frustrations you might have, any ideas you might have, even if it's simple as writing down your plan for the week, just starting off like that. Writing down ideas you have for your life. Writing down one thing, again, I'm just mumbling, I'm sorry. One thing I really recommend, this is a really, really, really powerful exercise, is the idea of a 5-year plan. Okay, I know friends who have done this and have reached literally their dreams. So when you go home tonight or tomorrow, whenever you get back home, I really recommend this. Think about who you want to be in 5 years. But I'm saying if there was no boundaries to what you could achieve, forget the laws of physics and everything else. What do you want to do? Who do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to work? What kind of person do you want to be? It's not easy. It takes a lot of reflection. I've done this before. It's very difficult because you have to look inside yourself and think about, what do I really want? What job do I really want to work in? What do I really want out of life? It's very difficult. Very, very difficult. Then you write it down. It can be anything. No judgments. You can write astronaut, write footballer, whatever you want. You can be whatever you want. It's fine. Then backtrack it toward today. Say, okay, I've got my dream now. I want to be an all-star footballer, baseballer, basketball, whatever it is. Yeah. I want to be an astronaut. I don't care what it is. It can literally be anything. I want to be a movie director. Okay. How do I get there now? Here I am today, and here's my dream. How do I reach it? And then write down your journey, because it's very practical. You can find the right ways to get there. This is one thing I'd very recommend. Point being is that you can use writing to almost solve any problem. There's some space over here, guys, if you want to come over here. You can use writing to literally solve any problem. I really believe that. So I think that's a good kind of reflection on that. Reflections conversation.
I'm going to jump to the main point that I wanted to talk about. When you write something, it is either an expression of love that you have for somebody, an expression of happiness, but also at the same time, consider it as an expression of sadness and grief. I'm going to read from this book real quick. In a culture like our own that is addicted to the relentless quest to feel happy, perhaps an unconscious attempt to bypass our misery, grief and sadness is a taboo. It's pathologized, that as if you have an illness, and aggressively avoided. Those people who are sad or grieving are said to look on the bright side, think positive, and count your blessings. When such empty platitudes don't work, basically always, they never work, people who experience sadness may often be numbed with drugs or alcohol. And this leaves victims of loss, sadness, and grief guilty or shame-ridden about their sadness and without the resources to handle their pain. Let's talk about this and let's reflect on this a little bit. I'm going to read this statement. This is from Ziyarat Ashura. This is a ziyarah to Imam al-Hussein. It's a ziyarah from us. We are asking Imam Hussein. Listen to this one particular piece. We're asking, I ask Allah for your sake, that is for the sake of Imam Hussein, and by the honored position that you have with him, the position that Imam Hussein has with Allah. And this is the most profound of statements that I've read in the ziyarah. That Allah grants me grief, that Allah grants me sorrow of your suffering. Why was that said? See, this is what the book was saying, that every time you have grief or sorrow or sadness, you need to be able to express it. And let me contextualize it with the children sitting here. You have a big exam, you prepared very well for it, and you didn't get the grade you want. So you were sad, right? You had grief. So what do you do with that grief? There are a couple of things you can do. You can either say, oh my God, I didn't do well, I didn't study well, and I need to hide this from my parents because my parents are going to be unhappy. So you go home and you're all upset, and you have all these different emotions of fear, anger on yourself, and you're feeling low. How did that all happen? Well, you were sad over not having a good grade, and all these emotions started coming up. And this is what I say to mothers and fathers sitting in this room. And this is what Nuri and everybody else is talking about. Your home is your safe space. Nuri was not able to write those poems if he didn't have that safe space to express himself. As a mother or a father, you need to make sure that your child can come home and say, Mom or Dad, I didn't do well, and I'm feeling sad, and I'm not happy. That's your grief, right? The other thing that needs to happen next is how do you overcome that sadness? That's in English called resilience. Your mother or your father will comfort you and say, it's okay. You did the best that you could. Let's figure out what areas do you want to do better in. These are very simple words. But as a parent, as an adult, you've given your child to explore, number one, and accept their sadness. And number two, you've given them the space to grow. I'm going to say something here that all of you have heard, and I'm going to ask you who said it. There's a very famous statement in our history that has been etched in our memory. It was said by a woman who witnessed the tragedy of Karbala. You know what she said after the tragedy when she was taunted in the court of Yazid and the situation under which Imam Hussein and his family were martyred? She said, I saw nothing but beauty. Now imagine you are that mother or father looking at your child and you said to your child, it's okay you didn't get a good grade, but I see nothing but beauty. Why? Because your child was able to express those emotions on a level that she was experiencing. Number one. That's the most important thing to understand. What am I feeling? When you are a writer and you write, and I say to the children, you don't have to write if you don't want to write. You can draw. The colors that you use, the imagery that you draw on the paper of maybe the wedding of Imam Ali or Fatima, or the tragedy of Karbala, or the Ghadir Khum, you can draw. And you can use different colors. You can express yourself that way. So when Sayyidah Zainab said, I saw nothing but beauty, what is the opposite of beauty? Ugliness, right? Did your child express any ugliness? No, the child is willing to learn, to grow. So what happens is, think of it as a parent. You have given your child the gift of safe space to express that emotion, to honor that feeling, and to be able to say, yes, I can do better. I have my parents on my side. I have my ability to learn from my past and my ability to move forward. Now, in the context of Imam Hussein, what Zainab said was even more profound. And on one level, as a mother, and I would say this, to all the sisters, the mothers and the daughters sitting here, you really need to understand what that means in your own personal life. That I saw nothing but beauty. What is that beauty that Imam Hussein exhibited on a very basic level? He was not bitter. He was not angry. He was not resentful. He was not complaining. All these ugliness that sometimes our own character might bring about of anger or fear or resentment. He didn't have any of that despite what was happening. That was the beauty. That was his faith. That was what Karbala did, is it revealed his character. Now, all that character that Sayyidah Zainab saw in his brother growing up, that beauty became more manifest on that day. And as a parent, as a writer of poetry, you know that when you deal with tragedy, you want to be able to explore the fundamental beauty of how you deal with it. So when, Brother Nuri has written books and poetry, what are the things he talks about? The name of his books are Tears Spoken, Remembrance. It might seem like so simple, but giving your child and giving yourself, and even on a very marriage level, allowing yourself as couples to be able to express how they feel in whatever shape or form is what will bring out the beauty in them as well. So this is grief. This is sadness. This is sorrow. This is what we honor. This is what cultivates our personality. This is what is called when the emotions of the heart are written down with the pen on a piece of paper. Imagine you ask your child, what did you learn from this experience of not having a good grade? Can you write about it? And you know what? For your child to be able to write about it, and what Nuri is saying over and over again, a week from that note, you can go back to that note, you get a good grade, and you can say, aha, I have now a building block. I have what I call courage in myself. I have resilience, and I can overcome this. So when we talk about self-expression, look at your own character in the mirror of the suffering of the Ahlul Bayt and say, what would I have done? And what do I need to do to have that sense of awareness that I don't blame God, I don't blame my parents, I don't blame Yazid, but more importantly, turn inward and say, how do I now deal with this tragedy? So when Sayyidah Zainab said, I saw nothing but beauty, I'm going to say this. I think as mothers and daughters, you probably will teach us more about that because your engagement in the family is more profound than the engagement of whether you have a son or a daughter or a husband. Because you're the nucleus, you're the Kaaba of the devotion in the family. You are the one who sets that safe space and makes the home environment so that your child is able to express this grief. You're going into the month of Muharram. What you're doing, what Nuri does in his writings, it's called soul work. It's very hard. It's very rewarding. And you know what? Protect your emotions. Don't deny them. Just run with it. Talk to your family who will explain how these emotions are and go from there. That is the basis of one aspect of self-expression when you're sad, when you're dealing with a tragedy.
Sorry,
Go for it.
I know you got a lot of workshops and stuff planned. I was just like, no, you're good, you're good. No, you're good. This is yours, by the way. Just they fell out. About reflection, and this is very important. And again, I don't like speaking about myself, but I want to make a point. So if you look at Brother Ali mentioned the books, they were published in 2008, 9, 10, 12, 14, and 16. So it's been about how many years? 9 years. Now you ask me the reason why. I'll give you like an excuse. Oh, I've been busy with work and stuff. But there's one thing that's changed in the past 8 years, which is this nonsense right here, right? We live right now in a society. I'm going to throw my phone over here just to prove this point. We live right now in a society that is so antithetical to how we are meant to be as human beings, leading to a point of reflection, right? We're so distracted. Everything is trying to distract. Social media is the worst thing in the world. To an extent, sometimes I'm like, I want to delete all my social media. But the thing is, like, because of how much it distracts you and takes you away from your day to day and your chance to reflect, right? I remember a few weeks ago, I was very lucky. I went on a trip with some friends to the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. Beautiful. We had like a place, there was like a nice deck, literally in the middle of the mountains. Probably the second time in my life, I would say, well, I just sat down, did nothing for like 2 days, right? In the middle of the mountains. It was beautiful. I just came back, reset. It just destroyed my stress and my anxiety. When I came back, Apple released that, what was it? The Vision Pro, right? And I watched the trailer for it. The VR goggles, they don't call it VR, but the goggles that they released. And to be honest, like thinking about in terms of a work standpoint, there's some things that are beneficial. But I was like, these guys are really trying to sell you for $3,500 what nature's giving you for free, which is what? Peace of mind. Am I wrong? Right? Instagram, social media, your phone, every distraction you can think of in this life is there selling you one thing: a better life and peace of mind. That's what they want to give you. When in reality, if you can sit with yourself, if you have access to a garden or any sort of greenery with some good people and a good book in your hand, a pen and a paper, you don't need anything else. Trust me on this. You don't need anything else. And I realized this again when I moved last year to this country. It's funny because there was only so many things I could take with me. So I got rid of a lot of my stuff, a lot of my clothes and stuff. Everything I wanted to take with me, I had to either, pay for the extra bag or pay to ship it. So it became a burden on me. When I reached here, we got the house ready and everything. I'm just like, every time I want to buy something, be it like a pair of jeans or anything I want to buy, I'm just like, do I really need this? What if I move again tomorrow? What if I die tomorrow? Is it really going to benefit me? I would rather, instead of buying things that aren't going to bring me any sort of benefit and become a burden on me, invest my time into reflecting. Invest my time into being at peace with the self, right? And I think that's what the whole idea of what we're trying to get at is that when you write, when you read, you are ultimately in a state of reflection. That's what Islam wants from us, to be in a state of reflection. There's a beautiful line from a movie that I love, which says, paraphrasing kind of, it says that when you're in the present moment, okay, when you're in the present moment, that place is the kingdom of God, right? And better than that, no one can take it away from you, right? You don't need to spend money. You don't need to travel. You don't need to go anywhere to be at peace with yourself, to be in the present moment, to be still with yourself. You don't need it, right? And that's all Islam is trying to push you toward. Why do we pray 5 times a day? Why does it push us towards dua and Quran? To keep our minds at peace, to keep our minds and hearts at peace, to sit with ourselves, to reflect, to think about Allah, to think about His creation, right? That is where you reach the pinnacle of what you can do. Imagine yourself now with a clean mind, not distracted by social media, not distracted by worrying about the past or the future. What can you achieve? What can you write? What can you create? What can you achieve at work? How present can you be at home with the family? Right? There's so much you can achieve. And I think that ultimately is what we all need to move toward. And I speak to myself that as well. Being present in the moment. That is where Allah wants you. And that is why He's pushing you to reflect. Because that is where you can achieve your best self. Phone away. I'll see you on your phone. You checked it straight away. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I think all the points made, I think they circle around how reflection brings you back to God, right? Whether you're going through grief and what Bibi Zainab went through, whether you're busy with work, it kind of stills you in the moment and helps you reconnect to God. And I know Dr. Dakim also talked about supplications and how supplications are a bounty that we have that we don't really tap into, right? What does Dua Kamal mean? What is it trying to tell us, right? Who is God? Do we know who God is based on what Ahl Bath have taught us? I mean, for me, I honestly didn't know until my later teen years, right? What Dua Kamal, what his translation even was. And I think reflection on things that Ahl Bath have taught us is the only path to God and the only path to true happiness. So I can relate to everything that was said. So I know we're running out of time. I think we have half an hour left, so we'll just quickly click through things. I do want to make this collaborative and give you guys a chance to reflect as well. But I found this quote on alislam.org, and it essentially talks about reflection and how your ability to even reflect is actually a light that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts in your heart. So your ability to reflect is actually a gift from God himself to bring you closer to him. So, I mean, if that's a gift from God and an illumination in your heart, I would try seeking reflection every single day because it can only benefit you, and it's God wanting you to come closer to him. So I think this is pretty powerful in terms of just like changing my perception on reflection, that it's actually a gift from God, just as everything else we have. This is a long excerpt from a research study that was done from Western scientists. And it essentially just talks about reflective writing and how reflective writing actually increases your ability to be more successful socially and also academically. So it's not only important for Islamic reasons and understanding God and who the Ahl-Bayt are, for example, but it's also important for your personal life, for your material life, for work, and just for developing as a human being holistically, right? So I think this is really cool how Islam and science obviously connect, and how Islam encourages things that science is now thinking are beneficial to you. Essentially, I have 5 hadiths on the screen, and what we ask of you is to spend just a couple minutes reflecting on your own about what the hadith means to you and what you think it means, right? And how it affects you personally and how it implies to your life, or applies to your life. And then I want you guys to share it within your group to show you that reflecting on the same hadith with a different perspective yields a different result, right? So we can all learn from each other only if we put our thoughts on paper, right? The more that we write, the more that we reflect, the more we can learn from each other. I think that's the purpose. That's a deep purpose of reflection and sharing our thoughts with one another. So this exercise is to show you that, we can think about the same thing, but come to different results based on our unique experiences that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has laid out for us. And then if anyone wants to share with the audience, you can share with the audience. So in total, we'll give 5 minutes for this activity, since we're short on time. The first hadith is take advantage of 5 opportunities before 5 other things: your youth before your senescence, your health before your illness, your wealth before your poverty, your leisure before your haste, and your life before your death. The second hadith is patience in the face of calamities makes one attain honorable ranks. The third one is how many wretched people there are whose days are being numbered, but yet they are laboriously seeking wealth. Number 4, verily the best of the best is a good temper. And 5, know for certain that whatever he does to you, meaning God, your own good and benefit lies therein. So the purpose of this is, instead of just reading it and moving on, actually take some time to reflect on what that means, and see how you can apply it to your life. So we'll give you 5 minutes now, and go ahead, think individually, and then you guys can collaborate. It made me really happy to see how engaged everyone was and just reflecting on these hadiths rather than just reading it and moving on, scrolling on Instagram. Does anyone want to share? Because I know there's a lot of good thoughts that came out of this.
Hello, salam everyone.
And your name too, please.
Okay, my name is Khadija, and so we had group 1, so we did the first one, and we broke it apart, like each thing. So for take advantage of 5 opportunities before 5 other things, it was kind of, it was one of the parts, but it was basically like how people only turn to God when things get hard. It was the, it just went away.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Must be installing update.
Your health before your illness. Like, I feel like people only turn to God when things get tough and when things get hard, but I feel like it's important to turn to Him regardless of the situation. People only want to go to a doctor like for checkups like when things get rough, but our group, we just correlated it to like, reach out to God before things are bad, like always.
Yeah, I love that. And it kind of relates to the last quote too, that whatever you go through, Alumia does it for your own good. So that's both in good times and bad. And
Right.
if you go to him during good times, it feels as good as if you go to him during bad times.
Right.
You just have to remember to do it.
Yeah, that one.
I love that. Thank you,
Thank you.
Khadija. Anyone else want to
I
share?
just want to add one more thing. When you write and you're able to express yourself, it will also give you the confidence to step up and also speak. Because what you're doing is you already have a foundation. What you wrote down instinctively, consciously, is already on a piece of paper. You know what you want to say. So in order to help you come up to the next level, is you speak it, and that becomes critical.
Go off of that point. Somebody had said this thing one time, and they were like, there's barakah in everything that you make barakah out of, right? So if you're eating a sandwich and there's two people, you're going to eat the sandwich, you'll feel full. But if you cut the sandwich in half, this person next to you will also like be satiated and you'll also be good. So going to like the wealth before your poverty is like you could make wealth in anything before you have to reach like the point where you're not really helping those in need.
Yeah, I love that. And then it also begs the question, we should reflect on what is wealth, you know? Imam Hassan actually has a hadith that says, someone asked him, what's poverty? And he said, greed for everything, right? So it's not really, it's wealth and poverty aren't associated with material things. Sometimes it's the wealth of your soul and how you view life. Like you said, like if you see barakah in things, you'll have barakah. But if you don't, then you won't.
So one way to remember that first one, hadith, instead of remembering the whole, it's called 5 before 5, right? It's 5 before 5. So the first one is youth before your old age, health, illness, wealth, poverty, leisure, haste. One of the things Nuri talked about social media. If you interact with social media, based on the algorithms, it's only going to show you what you like, right? And what happens? There's a term we use in the marketing, in digital media marketing, called attention economy. They're profiting off your one-sided view because you're consistently seeing the same thing over and over and over again. So think about your time when you're doing that, and then take a step back and say, wait a minute, but I already know this. Do I need to learn something new? Is there something different than what I'm thinking? Is it out there? Is to encourage yourself to think differently as well.
All right. So group number 5 was know for certain that whatever he does to you, your own good and benefit lies therein. So what we thought was, this is kind of hard to see for a lot of people who are constantly going through illness, sickness, poverty, these kind of things, right? And a lot of people just have it really tough in life. And that's sometimes we have to think about what Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam went through. They obviously had the hardest of trials, but at the end of the day, you know, Sayyidah Zainab Salamullahi alayha said, Ma ra'aytu Jamila. Even though she was going through all those struggles, she knew that at the end of the day, Allah rewards us for enduring those struggles themselves. So even if we're not seeing the good and benefit, like physically we're not feeling it in this world, sometimes that good and benefit lies for us therein in the hereafter.
Yeah, there's more than just this life. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to help us here in the next life. But even in trials and tribulations, there's always comfort knowing that God is there and He's watching over you. We just have to understand who God is and what that means by reading supplications like Dua Kamal. No matter what you go through, that supplication will help you in life because it separates you from this dunya and it directly connects you to God who's eternal. All right, I think we have time for one more reflection.
Yeah, I think that coming back to our the group, the hadith that we have, number 3rd. But what you talked about, Bibi Sayyidah Zainab, she said, I saw nothing but beauty. She watched the slaughtering of her brother, of her nephews. That's a very tragic scene to see. It's not, no, you cannot see even slaughtering of an animal. If you show the kids in the United States, if you see a slaughtering on it, they say, we don't want to eat any, we want to be vegetarian. But she saw that this action is being happened. How much what Allah was watching it. And what Imam Hussein did, what her brother did, is the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And she could see that, how much reward Allah has for that sacrifice. And that's what it is. I mean, why do we read 5 times namaz? What is the purpose of namaz? And the answer is the namaz, the why we read namaz. And what is the goal of our life? Every namaz, Allah says, read 5 namaz. But Allah say, what do we say before the namaz? Niyat. I read 4 rakat namaz zuhur, qurbatan illallah. To get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The journey, the goal of our life, or of all our action is to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever you do. And that's how I believe that everything when you look at it, you see is this, what is that brings, that's why we say, why we reflect, why is it important to reflect on Quran and everything? Because anything you reflect on your own body, like you could look at it, how could this complicated body? There is a creator behind it. You look in the Quran, tafakkur and tadabbur, Allah says, reflect on it. Many times Allah reminds in Quran is because when you will reflect on it, what it will be the gain? Closeness to Allah, more understanding of the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like what does that mean, right? We should reflect on that. And that's really transforming the soul, transforming who you are. That's why poverty is greed for everything, right? It's all character building. And character building because you recognize who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. You recognize His status. You recognize His mercy. And it makes you want to be a better person. That's all it comes down to. Do you want to quickly share your reflection?
What the brother said about the calamities and what a believer said. There's ayah in the Quran, Surah Al-Mulk, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. Allah who created life and death, and then He encountered on us bala, test, calamities, so to see who is going to has the best endurance. So the calamities, the bala that Allah put on a believer is a test for his belief. So it comes as a plus, not a minus. Because the more you endure, the more you create a strength in your belief. So it's all in the Quran. And the reflection of this action by Ahlul Bayt reflect exactly the meaning of the ayah. 1. Second, it's because we were number 5, but each was number 5. Number 4, the best character is the best of the one who has a temper. We all think temper is something bad. So Imam Hassan chose this kind of concept of a good temper. Because a good temper in a believer is a temper that he is normal for him to believe in the right way. A believer always has a smiley face, an endurance personality, a good behavior, a good character in the community and his family. That is the good temper of a believer. The third thing is about dua kumail. I want to bring a very important about the supplication in dua. Just my own observation. We don't want to make a dua as a way of repeat itself, repentance. You have to create, because if you listen to dua kumail with a person who is not interacting with dua or doesn't have a good voice, it might have no reflection on your heart. Try to listen to the best person who make you really interact with the dua. Don't make dua, like a daily dua that you do as just a repetition without having any effect on your soul. Change it. Listen to different reciters. Don't make this ibadah as a repetition. A beautiful dua that you listen to and you interact is better than just listening to it and you are not paying attention to.
SubhanAllah. I mean, I can relate to everything that you're saying. I know we're running out of time. Dr. Taqeem, you were going to talk to us about how Shia Islam has spread through the pen, if you'd still like to. And then I know you also had a reflection.
Yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Very quickly, we have been talking about reflection. It is true we need to reflect, but importantly, we need to ask ourselves, how do we reflect? And what do we reflect on? There's a very beautiful verse in the Quran, Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innal qulub. We're looking for peace and tranquility. We all are. And the Quran says it is through the remembrance of Allah that we attain that peace. When you look at, for example, calligraphy, you will see that the name of Allah is in the middle. And there are different spokes, if you like, or ways to get to that name. How do you get to Allah? As the Quran reminds us again, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. To Allah belongs the most beautiful names. And therefore, reach out to Allah through His beautiful names. Have you ever wondered why is Allah telling us? Because Allah is beautiful. It is through His beautiful name that we reach Him. But it's not only that Allah is beauty, He has put that beauty in us. The Quran tells us that. وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكَ. Do beautiful deeds just as Allah has created you beauty. This is the whole purpose of reflection. In other words, we have been given beauty, how to activate those attributes of beauty within ourselves. You want to reach Allah? This is how you do it. Nobody has been created full of hatred. We only become hateful when we refuse or we do not activate the attribute of love. We all have love, but we need to activate it. We all have patience, but if we don't activate the attribute of patience, we become impatient, and so on. So the whole purpose of reflection then is to go within yourself to see how I can activate that attribute. And remember, Allah has mentioned Amalus Salih in the Quran. I was saying it in the morning, more than 120 times in the Quran. Now, very briefly, how Shia Islam spread through writing. And again, we are running short of time, so I'll be very brief. Let's not forget that Islam grew up in what kind of environment? Jahiliyyah. Not only ignorance, but illiteracy. Those people could not read or write. Therefore, the Prophet, one of the first things that he did was to tell the captives of Badr, you teach 10 Muslims how to read or write, and you are free. Why does he do that? Because he wants to create a culture of reading and writing. In fact, the Prophet himself, got special scribes to write down the Quran. The first person to actually compile the Quran the way it was revealed was who? Imam Ali alayhi salam. In fact, Ibn Nadim, a very famous biographer, says, I saw the book of Imam Ali himself, the Quran that was compiled by Imam Ali. The Imams themselves, now this is important for us to note. Amongst other Muslims, they were told, do not write down traditions. Do you know that, right? They were prohibited from, on the contrary, our Imams told us, you must write down traditions. Preserve our teachings through the traditions and write them down so that you don't forget. Number one, the Imams used to have classes. We all have heard of that. The University of Imam As-Sadiq, he had over 4,000 students. Because of his efforts, not only did they write down the hadith, but all the laws that we have today that come from the Imams come from where? His students who wrote down. Most of those books are not available to us today, by the way. The students who wrote, Imam As-Sadiq's students, we don't have any book by Zurara Muhammad bin Muslim. But our other scholars who came later, Kulaini, Mufid, and As-Saduq, they had access to those books. Can you see how that writing, which was done in the time of the Imams, have benefited to us today? I write one book and I say, Alhamdulillah, I've written one book. Our scholars wrote more than 200 books. You read Biharul Anwar, 110 volumes. I pity his wife, 110 volumes written by whom? Allama Majlisi, one person. Ayatollah Al-Khui has one set of book, 23 volumes. Mu'jamul Rijal, and so on. The point I'm trying to drive at is the significance of writing. And by the way, when you want to write down something, first of all, you make notes because you get different ideas. But then don't stop there. Then you go and synchronize your notes. In other words, what you write must flow from point to point to point. I always do that. Otherwise, you have like some people who come and speak and they're all over the place. You don't know where they're going or coming, because they have not synchronized and make those points connected. They are hanging. I used to be a lousy writer, by the way. But I had to learn myself the art of writing. And as I said earlier, what writing does is to actually concretize your ideas, make you a better person. Finally, about ziyarat. The ziyarat is also a way of reflection. I always tell people, I take groups to ziyarat. I say, don't just go there and recite ziyarat. You could have done that in America. Why are you going up to there? The ziyarat is actually an encounter with the Imam. Remember that. It's an encounter, Imam. You don't only see the dharih, you see the Imam under the dharih also. Otherwise, how are we going there? And therefore, that's why we go and touch those dharih. Why do we embrace the Dari? Nobody wants to embrace and kiss metal. It's what is inside it. That is important. And therefore, once you've done that, once you've recited the ziyarat, you sit down in one point and contemplate. And not only contemplate, see how you reflect the Imam. We are an image of the Imam. In other words, the Imam does not reside in the Dari. He resides in your heart. And I want to end with just one particular anecdote. It's a two anecdote. The very first time I took some group, a person, we'll call him Abbas. Abbas was telling me that he was praying very close to the Dari of Imam Hussein in Karbala. And you know, we have more. But there are so many people that when you stand up, people just pass by and kick your more away. As he was praying, somebody came next to him, near Abbas. And he took that more. Every time Abbas stood up, he took the more. When Abbas was about to go to sajda, put it back there. He did this the whole salat. After a while, when he finished, Abbas turned to him and says, "Thank you very much." The man says, "Don't worry. Your father is sick, but he will be okay. Don't worry." Abbas says, "How do you know about my father? I don't know you. You don't know me." He said, "We've been told you, we've been sent to you." And he disappeared. That tells you that when you are close to the Imam looks after you. He comes to you. Don't think the Imam is in the Dari, my friends. That's why we say, you remember when you go for ziyarah, what do? Izna dukhul. You remember Izna dukhul? The permission to enter. Ashhadu annaka tasma'u kalami wa taruddu salami. I bear witness to my Imam that you hear what I say and you are replying me. But because of my sins, I cannot hear you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much. Well, that wraps up. We had a couple of activities lined up, but the purpose of that was to reflect on. Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just jumping in. It's nothing to do with anything that's being said, by the way. But there's one parallel that I really like, and it's something. It's a hadith from Imam Islam, where he says, "He who knows himself knows his Lord. He who knows himself knows his Lord." The reason I love this hadith so much is because you can never know your Lord and you can never know yourself. But your life is a journey in trying to discover yourself, right? That's all it is. Your life is a journey in trying to figure out who you are. What's the best version of you? How do I reach there? And in turn, you find out who Allah is. So thinking about reflection, there was a moment last week. I was with a friend who's not religious as well, by the way, but he gave me a line that I stuck in my head forever. We were actually here in Baltimore. We had we're filming a conference. And we were standing, it was just like in the parking lot of a Target or something. And there was a beautiful sunset. And he was standing there, he was just staring at the sunset. He's like, I just take these moments in. I was like, yeah, that's a beautiful thing. And he said something amazing. He was like, I will never be the same as the person I am right now. So I want to appreciate who I am right now. In the next second, I'll become someone else. The second after that, I'll be someone else. And the second after that, I'll be someone else. So I make sure that in every moment of my life, I appreciate who I am and where I am, because I know I'll never be the same person again. Right? Really think about that. I thought it was profound. Really think about it. That is how we intertwine the ideas of staying in the moment, in the present, understanding who you are. And don't forget that writing is an exploration of that. Reflecting and writing come hand in hand. They are essentially an exploration of who you are as a person, deep down. And it's not an easy thing, by the way, to go inside and search inside yourself. Even like writing poetry, it seems very simple. It doesn't take long for many people. It doesn't take long, but the mental strain of it, I can't explain to you how difficult it is. Like when reciters ask me for poems, it just stresses me out so much. See, since I've had fights with reciters because like, where's the poem? Like, yeah, I'll give it to you soon. I'll give it to you soon. But like, it's such a mental strain on you. But what you get in exchange is your courage builds up, your resilience builds up, and your mind builds up. It's not easy at all, but it's very fulfilling. And I think that's the main drive to take away. Hopefully that benefit, inshallah.
Thank you, Nuri. I think we're out of time officially, and I believe there's another workshop in here, but I just want to take the time to thank you all so much for coming out. Hopefully this workshop benefited you. Really excited to see what type of writing works, or even if it's not public, private works that you do generate from this workshop. Just remember to always stay curious, reflect, and don't don't let that curiosity go. Find answers for it, because it'll definitely lead you back to God, inshallah. And in our second activity, we're going to ask you to reflect on Ahl Bayt's impact on your life and your personal experiences. You could do that in your own time now that we're out of time here. But I think if you actually reflect on who Ahl Bayt are and what they mean to you actively for 10 minutes even, or maybe even 2 minutes, it'll really transform your perception of them, and you'd want to learn more about them. So